pretty much a lock for the #1 seed out there. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another video of NBA Now. I'm your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So today, we're gonna be talking about Steph Curry, and why I think, you know, he's got a pretty good chance this upcoming season to get himself his hat trick of MVPs. Obviously, we know that he is the one and only unanimous MVP in NBA history at this point. He has 2 of those. He has 3 NBA championships, 2 with Kevin Durant and 1 prior to Kevin Durant. Multiple time scoring champ and 7-time All-Star. You know, a decorated guy. If he retired right now, he'd go down as a top 2 point guard in 97% of people's minds. It's pretty undoubtedly greatest shooter of all time. And that's almost a debate for another video. Shouldn't be, but, you know, some old heads out there. You gotta move. Anyways, yeah, we're gonna be talking about Steph Curry, why I think he has a very good shot at winning this NBA MVP this upcoming season, and kind of elaborating a little bit more into the Warriors thing. Obviously, I have another video about the Warriors, and, you know, kind of going deeper into that, but today we're going to be just focusing mostly on Curry. We'll kind of expanding slightly around him, obviously. But yeah, if we want to start off like that, so this last season he played 63 of the 72 games, obviously pushed the Warriors to the 8th seed, where they eventually lost out of the playoffs through the playing games due to strong performances from the Lakers and the young Grizzlies team, which battled against them well. But yeah, I mean, this last season he had a career high in points per game with 32. He averaged over a steal per game. He had almost 6 assists per game, and then he had about 5.5 rebounds per game. So, you know, super solid across the board. I don't think, I mean, it's kind of weird, something I've never or have kind of taken advantage of him. He just randomly just gets rebounds. Like he's not a guy you'd expect to be averaging, you know, 5 rebounds, half a dozen rebounds a game. But just somehow he just manages to just be in the right spot, get the rebounds, and keep it going. And so I think that's kind of underrated, but that's not really much of what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about his shooting, we're here to talk about his scoring, and we're here to talk about what he can do this upcoming season. So if we come through and we look at this Warriors roster this upcoming season, Klay Thompson is supposed to be back at some point this season. That is Curry's running mate. That's his Bonnie and Clyde. That's his Superman and Batman. I don't even know. That's his dynamic duo, right? That's his guy. And he's gonna have him back at some point this season. I think he might miss, you know, the start of the season a little bit. If not, he'll have him at the start of the season. I'm not entirely sure. But his running mate is going to be back at some point this season. And, you know, when we talk about Curry, we have to talk about gravity. I know a lot of, you know, people that don't like Curry hate talking about the word gravity when it relates to basketball, but it's a fact. I mean, if you're you know, going to talk about clutch ability, if you're going to talk about carrying a team on your back, right? Clutch ability. You think Michael Jordan, you think Kobe Bryant. When you think carrying a team on your back, you think LeBron James, right? When you think gravity, you think Curry, right? These are all almost non-entirely metric words that are used to describe the game of basketball, but are very important when you're talking about it, especially with some of these higher level players in NBA history. And Curry definitely classifies himself as one of those players, being a borderline, if not a top 10 player all time. And so, you know, he's going to not only have his gravity, but obviously Klay has that same type of effect, especially as a spot-up shooter, you know, for the Warriors. And so I think, you know, even if you see a decline in some of his defensive ability or maybe his lateral quickness and stuff like that, you're still going to see the guy. I mean, this is a guy that on 3 dribbles scored 60 points. So if he doesn't need to slide across as much, I think he'll be all right. And that'll be huge for Curry. It'll pull some of these double teams away from him. Obviously, also as the roster's gotten better these last couple years, it's definitely going to help him, with the depth and, having a couple guards behind him that, if they're up a lot, he's not going to have to play a lot. But, I mean, if we're talking about a player that had one of the best months of basketball out of any player to ever walk the earth, we're talking about Steph Curry. I mean, this last, I want to say it was April, the man went berserk. He was averaging like 40+ points per game, like 60% from three. It was insane. And so having Clay back is just, I don't think going to lead to more of that, but going to lead to more, consistent, just crazy months, right? Not only are you going to have that, you're going to have the storyline, right? You're going to have, we know MVP is a big thing that has to do with storyline. And when we're looking at Curry's storyline, we're looking at, okay, wins his MVPs, wins his championships. Kevin Durant leaves, gets injured, comes back, has, a great season, has that great month, loses in the play-in game, finally gets his running mate back, goes to the playoffs, is a high seed, you know what I mean? That's a super great storyline, super easy to fit into the media, super easy to push. To push him for, a hat trick MVP, right? There's a lot that you can throw into the storyline to build it, which the media loves to do, and definitely, we know matters, when it comes down to this. I don't think how much, I think it matters a bit much. I understand having a storyline, but, it has been a bit outblown or overblown the last few years, as it just seems like we're pushing slightly more away from what we're seeing on the court versus what we are imagining in our heads, right? But, I mean, like I said, he's going to have his running mate back. You're going to have Andrew Wiggins. Draymond Green has had his ups and downs the last few years, but, has started to try and, kind of pull himself back together last year. James Wiseman should have a good improvement. Obviously, I know first-year centers struggle a lot. But I still think what we saw out of him was super good. And, if we're looking at a guy, like this is a guy that was projected to go #1 for a while. It was up between him, Edwards, and LaMelo. But, for a long time there, prior, to the draft, a few years prior to the draft, this was the lock #1, right? We didn't expect Edwards to get as good as he did, and we were all kind of uncertain about LaMelo, some higher, some lower, but mostly we were all over the place about LaMelo. But James Wiseman, I mean, since the dude was, young in high school, we all knew this is a top 3, if not #1 pick. Comes out, he's the 2nd overall pick to the Warriors, right? And then I think you'll see that improvement, right? When you're looking at another guy like that, you're looking at DeAndre Ayton, right? A guy that came out, was a 1st overall pick to the Suns. And do I think James Wiseman is going to be what DeAndre Ayton was this last year for the Warriors? No, I don't think so. I think that's a lot of pressure to put on the guy, and I think he still has a little bit, he's got more learning to do. But if he gets better, I think he'll get that same progression that Ayton had, where every year he got better. And, until they made the finals. And I don't expect Ayton to stop getting better, right, at this point. I think he still has some untapped potential in him, just as I do Wiseman. And so, this is a guy that is going to help out Curry, too, because if he can, if he's working on that interior presence, or even that, trying to become more of a defensive anchor and stuff like that, that only helps a guy in Curry who's playing on the outside and is a relatively decent team defender, right? The stronger you get interiorly with your base, core defense, it just helps some of those, less gifted defenders, but guys that are still out there hustling, like a Stephen Curry. And I do want to say quickly, while I'm in the middle of this video, I didn't want to say it at the start, but while I'm in the middle of the video, I do like Curry, if you can't tell. I don't know if I'd make the video if I didn't. But yeah, I just wanted to preface that. I do own a Curry jersey, so. Anyways, yeah, I mean, you're also looking at guys like Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody, who looked good in the summer league. They're going to come in and help your team. Even if Andre Iguodala isn't crazy good at this point, he's still going to be a great mentor and is going to help that defense get better. And this is a team that was good defensively last year, right? When you come and you look at this team's defensive stats last year, you're looking at a team that held the opposing team to the third lowest field goal percentage in the league at barely over 45%. The only two other teams that were better were the Utah Jazz with Rudy Gobert, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year and 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, I think, at this point. And the New York Knicks with Tom Thibodeau, a renowned coach for his defense, and a very the surprising team of last year, right? They held them opponents to the least amount of points. And then even when you're looking at 3-point percentage, the team didn't allow opponents to shoot over 36% from the field. They allowed 35.9, and that puts them at the 8th best 3-point defense in the league. So you're looking at a top 10 3-point team, a top 3 field goal percentage team, and this was a team that was putting up points, right? When we start looking at what this team was able to do point-wise, this team was putting up over 113 points per game. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks at the top were putting up 120, but the Cleveland Cavaliers at the bottom were putting up 103. So you're kind of right. A little bit outside of that middle range, you're closer to the top than the bottom, but 10 more than the lowest scoring team is definitely a positive. And I think we can only expect to see that go up a little bit with the return of Clay and the improvement of the depth on this team. Also, I think you're going to be getting even more defensive stops this year, which just allows you to push into transition with some of the younger guys you have, or even just look to just get more offensive possessions. And more offensive possessions typically means more points because it gives you more chances, right? But, the Phoenix Suns were only 2 points per game above the Warriors last year, and that's the Warriors without Klay Thompson. And even without some of their rookies that I think are going to come in and be decent contributors off the start. This is another year for Andrew Wiggins to be in the system, and that's only going to help Curry, right? If you're looking at current Andrew Wiggins and you're looking at Harrison Barnes that the Warriors had when they ended up winning the championship, I think I'm taking current Andrew Wiggins, right? Current Andrew Wiggins is a guy. Obviously, I think he's making a bit more money by a little bit than Harrison Barnes was. But, he's a guy he's really started to bring it on the defensive end and really, kind of honed into that. And his shot selection has gotten significantly better since going to Golden State. And this is just another year under his belt in Golden State, another year with the team, another year to build that chemistry and kind of grow that focus on what you want to do and, try and win a championship. But yeah, defensively rating-wise, this team was the 5th rated defensive team last year. And the 18th opponent points per game scoring, so that's below the half point. Obviously, kind of giving up a lot of points, but I think that just comes with the fast offense that they were playing, being at that 12th, so a little bit above the middle of the pack, kind of like I was saying. The one thing that I think you do have to look out for is Curry getting injured this year. Now I think having Clay back and I think having some of these younger guys, like I said, should keep some miles off of him. And I don't think we have to worry about the counting stats. I think he'll have those as he's shown last year and obviously previously in his career. But we know obviously early in his career his ankles were a bit of a problem, and we've kind of started to see him get a little bit more injured the last few years after kind of being a pretty almost Iron Man type of player for a few years there. When they were winning a lot. You look at from like 2013 to 2017, the lowest amount of games he played was 78 games. And, compared to the season prior to that when he only played 26. And then as of recently, obviously we know that in 2019 he had his hand injury, so he only played 5 games. But last year he played 63 out of the 72, so 9 less games than typical. And then even in 2018-2019, he only played 69 out of the 82. So there's definitely been a little bit of a pattern here the last few years of him just not playing as much. And obviously this last year, if you're playing a full season, that's probably in the low 70s, which isn't bad, right? In low 70s is not bad. That's maybe a couple rest games, maybe one minor injury for a week or something like that. But definitely not that bad overall. And I'm just super excited to see what he's going to do. I think if we can kind of take April as a sample of what he did last year, I think he had the James Harden effect last year. When James Harden was in Houston, great regular season, and then boom, dead in the playoffs. And I think by the time that it just kind of came down to those playing games and kind of came down to the end of the season, just what he did to put them in that position to be there in the stacked Western Conference that it is, made it very difficult for him to kind of finish that out and push him into the playoffs and even potentially push farther. So again, like I said, with those younger guys, that's going to help with that. But you're not going to win the MVP as an 8 seed. All right, I think we all know that. And I think a reason that he has a big chance to win the MVP is in part due to injuries on other teams. Obviously this Warriors roster, I expect pretty decent improvement out of it, and definitely, gives you a lot of 2015, 2016, or 2014, 2015 Warriors vibes, right? Where you can kind of just see the depth and, almost feel the team like truly starting to come together again. But yeah, when you're looking at other teams around the league, you're looking at the Clippers, who aren't going to have Kawhi. You're looking at the Nuggets, who aren't going to have Jamal Murray. You're looking at a questionable fit even in Los Angeles, right? And we're mostly going to be looking at the Western Conference because you got to get high, right? So if the Lakers don't fit, that only helps you in the standing wise. Or if it takes them a little bit to get it figured out, that helps you standing wise, even if they do end up fitting. But yeah, I think if we, even look through this, we don't know if Porzingis is going to get injured again. We know that for the Mavs, he's been kind of an injury issue. Or even if he's going to be on the team the whole year, as, trade rumors have been kind of lingering around him, I expect Utah to probably take a little bit of a drop back this regular season. I think their team is better than last year. They definitely have more switchability, and they definitely are going to try and, I think, account for what happened in the playoffs this last season. But I think, having been a pretty solid regular season team the last few years, I think they're going to focus on getting a middle seed and just trying to save Donovan Mitchell for the playoffs, right? Because obviously we know that they struggled with injuries in the playoffs. Although they were facing a Clippers team without Kawhi there for Game 6, Donovan Mitchell was injured and playing through it. Mike Conley was injured and playing through it. And you didn't quite have the personnel to match that 5 out. Now you have the personnel to do that. And so I think that they'll probably coast a little bit throughout the regular season and try and up it as they typically do in the playoffs, especially Donovan Mitchell. The Phoenix Suns, I would probably expect to take the 1 seed in the conference, which definitely gives Chris Paul a good shot at the MVP, looking that they pushed themselves to the finals last year. But I think a lot of people will lean away from that due to his counting stats probably decreasing a little bit this year. Maybe not, maybe staying relatively the same. But I think his counting stats are very, very low for an MVP. And I think his probably best chance was last year, coming out of the team and making him a playoff team in over a decade. The Trailblazers, they have a decent chance to be high in the seeding. Kind of depends how Dame, is Dame going to be there the whole season or whatnot. And then, you're looking at the rest of this conference and you don't really see any other top 4 seeds, right? So if you're saying that Phoenix, Portland, Utah, and Golden State can make the top 4 teams, I think that that's very reasonable. Or, even put the Lakers in there, and you could even slide Golden State to 5, but I don't think so. I think that you're looking at Portland or Utah there at 5, and that, kind of secures Golden State that top 4 position. Then you're probably looking at Dallas, at the Nuggets, at the Clippers, and then, kind of in that second range, pushing for the playoffs or pushing for that playing game, you're looking at Memphis, potentially New Orleans. We never know when they're going to figure it out. Minnesota, if they're healthy. Sacramento, obviously, has that guard tandem out there. Houston might even, get better, as obviously they drafted Jalen Green. They're going to have Kevin Porter Jr. playing the point a lot. And so they're going to be young and strong and hopefully have Christian Wood back, who we know was fighting for an all-star team before he got injured this last season. So there's not a ton of competition here to get that top seed. You're going to have a lot of chances to win in the regular season in a somewhat depleted Western Conference compared to, almost the last decade, pretty much. Typically, the Western Conference is the Western Conference, but that might be the East this year. You know what I mean? The East might be better. When you look across the board, although Philly's got the Ben Simmons situation, I still think the rest of that roster is strong enough to, with a potential trade of Ben Simmons to get, even if you do, take the one trade that was offered to them, that we know, heavily was offered to him, or not heavily, but like pretty much set in stone was offered to him, was Malcolm Brogdon in a first round pick. Even if you put Malcolm Brogdon on that roster with what they have, with Joel Embiid potentially trying to put him on his back and maybe go for an MVP himself this next season, as obviously we know he didn't win it this last season. I think that's pretty much a guaranteed top four team with or without Ben Simmons, or assets relating to Ben Simmons. Brooklyn, I think, is pretty much a lock for the number 1 seed out there. Just a super strong roster in the East, and would probably be Curry's biggest contender would be Kevin Durant. Although we know that when the Warriors were at their height with Kevin Durant and Curry, we kind of just said no MVPs to them, so that does help Curry's case a little bit. Milwaukee, New York, Atlanta, Miami, Boston got better. Washington might fight for a play-in. Indiana should be back in the playoffs. Charlotte's going to be getting better. Chicago, we know, is going to be in the playoffs. Toronto's going to be fighting for it. And then you've got the bottom teams for Cleveland. They should have a good defense. Orlando's going to be trying to figure out their guard situation, and Detroit has the number 1 overall pick. So I think when you look at the East, you look at a better conference this upcoming season, and I think that just opens things up more for Steph Curry to try and win his trifecta, try and get an MVP, and who knows, maybe the Warriors, get an MVP and get another championship this next season. So this was a little bit longer of a video. I was kind of rambling on, had some stuff I wanted to touch on, but I appreciate everybody that made it to this point. Obviously, like I said, it has been your boy Dom from NBA Now, and yeah, we're gonna end it off here. So if you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe for more, and catch y'all tomorrow. Peace out.